welcome in everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. My name is Jesse and welcome back to another exciting broadcast with us here at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. I know we've got a lot of familiar faces. In fact, we've got classes that have joined us like 30 times this year already, so bravo for keep coming back. But if you are new to us, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. I shared this with our StreamYard class before we went live, but for our YouTube friends too, if you haven't checked out our Daily Dives playlist on our YouTube channel, I really encourage you to check it out. We've got some amazing stories on the go there. I will note in advance, for the first time I'm doing my job properly in a while, we will have a Kahoot today. If you haven't joined us for a Kahoot yet, they're a ton of fun. 4 quick questions, test your understanding, have a little fun between the talk and the Q&A portions. If you want to bring that up on a separate device, I will highlight that again before we do it live. Now, for today's program, I am so thrilled as we are diving back in with one of my very favorite topics, and that is plastics. How we can combat the amount of plastics in the world, how we can make sustainable choices, learning a little bit more about how we got ourselves into the sticky wicket to begin with. And to join us to talk about all that is Kathy Raiz from Beyond Plastics. She is going to be our guide today on a pretty epic adventure. I'm very excited to dive back in with this topic. I hope you guys are keen too. You must be, because you had the choice of all these amazing speakers and you chose plastics today. We have a really big audience and I'm very excited. So without further ado, I will stop talking. Kathy, welcome to the broadcast for the very first time ever. So nice to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Jesse. I am so excited to be here with everyone today. And like Jesse said, thank you so much for choosing this topic to learn a little bit more about. It's a really important topic, near and dear to my heart. And I'm just thrilled to be able to speak with you guys. I have been involved with Beyond Plastics for about close to a year and a half now. And I actually give presentations. I'm part of their speakers bureau. So I give presentations to lots of different audiences, but my favorite audiences are students. So I actually have gone through a lot and given a lot of presentations right here in my local schools. I am hailing from Needham, Massachusetts, just outside of Boston. So like I said, I've gone into many different classrooms in our community because we are trying to, through our Green Needham, which is another icon you see up there, which is a local volunteer community, we're trying to pass a plastic bag ban. So trying to make some efforts right here at a local level. But I'm going to take you kind of through my own experience with learning more about plastic and questions that I had and kind of the path I took. So without further ado, let's talk about trash. Woo! I was wondering if I could get some feedback from the audience, and if you could sort of help me with the definition of what's your definition of trash? What is trash?
Ooh, so for our YouTube classes, if you guys want to share in the chat, please do. I'm going to come to a few classes directly actually for this. So Mr. Hancock's class, I'll come to you guys in Georgetown. What's your definition of trash? Any thoughts?
How would you describe trash, everybody?
Disgusting.
What would you describe?
Disgusting.
Pollution.
Pollution, disgusting. Good. Okay, good opening option. Miss Hurley's class, you guys have a student right at the camera. What do you think?
It's like mostly just stuff that you throw away, like plastic and paper and other stuff.
Nice. Okay, so we've got descriptions of the things we're getting rid of. We've got adjectives for it, that it's gross, it's dirty, it's disgusting. Kathy, I think that's a good start. I know you have a little more interactives with us later on, so I'll bring you together classes in a bit.
Great. Yes, that's exactly right. Trash is kind of anything that we feel has kind of met the end of its life, its useful life to us, and we're done with it, and we've decided that we're going to discard it. And so I think a big perception that people have is when they discard trash, you know, they maybe put it out in a bin and it gets picked up by a truck at the end of their driveway, or maybe they bring it to a transfer station and they either recycle it or kind of take care of it there. But for most of us, once we kind of are done with an object and we put it out in the trash, it disappears, right? It just goes away completely. Or does it? Oh, not really. So what I kind of want to talk to you today about is that even when we are done with something and we put it into the trash or the recycle, it doesn't really ever go away. There is no away. It has to go somewhere on our planet and somewhere and has some kind of an impact on our environment. So this is actually at a transfer station in the Maldives. And you can just see some of my classes when I show this picture say, you know, if you actually look at it, it kind of looks beautiful. There's a lot of different colors and it's a very vast, but it is a huge, huge pile of pollution, of trash, and a lot of it happens to be plastic. That's why it's so colorful. And then I kind of switch over and say, hey, a lot of people have probably seen this symbol. When we talk about this symbol, what comes to mind is that something is recyclable. And I think that most of the time we focus on that top word, recycle. And we feel like, oh, if it's recyclable, I put it into the recycle bin and that object gets processed and it comes back as something that is useful. It may come back as another item just like I put in. So it kind of goes through this process. The thing I want to talk to you a little bit more about today is reuse and reduce. So there are three sides to this triangle. And unfortunately, like I said, we focus mostly on the recycle, but I want to ask you to really focus a little bit more on the reusing and reducing part of this. So when we reuse things, a lot of times a great example of how I reuse things with my two students. So I have two kids, one who is a 5th grader and one who's a 9th grader. And at the end of every school year, we take all of their school supplies and we stick them into a drawer for the summer. And then when we get the new school list at the beginning of the school year, the next school year, we go through those. And if there are items, if there are folders or pencils or rulers or tape that is still left, we reuse that for the next school year. And that way, kind of talking about the next part of our triangle, we're able to reduce the amount of things that we are purchasing. So yes, we don't walk into school. My students don't walk into school with all shiny objects. And I know that that's a lot of fun. It's fun to buy new things, but we think about it from an environmental standpoint and we try to reuse the objects that we have and take care of them from year to year. And therefore we're able to reduce some of that trash that we're putting out into the world. So as I've been going through my process of learning about plastics and focusing on trash and recycling and the best way for our family to make a minimal impact on the environment, I was noticing these objects. So, we drink a lot of milk in our house and we have 2 cats. And, we obviously send things through the mail. We use Amazon and we get packages all the time. And so I was wondering as I was going through, what do I do with these objects? Because I noticed, like, for instance, the milk container, it has a plastic spout. And I thought that the carton itself was just made out of cardboard. So I wasn't sure if I rip out the plastic spout, can I put the cardboard container into a recycle bin? What do I do with that? And then the mailer, I noticed that the mailers were coming with paper on the outside, but they had plastic wrap, bubble wrap on the inside. And so I wasn't sure if I could recycle that or how would I dispose of that properly. And I have tried to separate the paper from the inside on the plastic. Oof, it's really challenging and that's not a good solution. And similarly, when I was feeding our cats or changing the cat litter, I had noticed that the bags that the cat litter and the cat food come in have changed over time. When I was a kid, they were made out of paper and I could easily recycle them. But now I've noticed that they're made out of this thick, heavy plastic. And so I wasn't sure if I could recycle that with the plastic bags or what I should do with that. So I've really noticed going through my life that as you go to the grocery store, plastic is surrounding us everywhere. And actually, before I move on, I forgot to mention, what I've learned is that with all 3 of these items, they're all trash because they all have plastic components and they're called, they're mixed materials. So even the cardboard that carton is made out of, the milk carton is made out of, you don't see it, but there is a thin plastic film that's on the outside of that milk carton. So it is not recyclable. It is not compostable. It is trash. And same thing, like I said, with the flyer and with the cat food bag, they are all just become trash. And so I felt like I'm adding to this problem. And like I mentioned, when you go to a grocery store, we are surrounded by plastic. Yes, it's convenient and beautiful to look at when the fruit is cut up for us, but fruit actually comes in its own container. Watermelons, they have a shell, and you can actually just pick up the watermelon or the cantaloupe by itself. It doesn't need to come in a plastic container. So as I was exploring, I noticed that on all of these plastic containers that you see these symbols on the bottom. And gosh, where have I seen that symbol before? You'll notice the chasing arrow symbols. Well, they are the recycle symbol. So I thought to myself, fantastic. Anything that I'm purchasing at the store, if it's in plastic and it has this symbol on it, I can recycle it. I can put it into my bin, and I know that I am taking care of the planet. I'm doing my part. I'm not putting it into the trash. I'm putting it into the recycle bin because I see this symbol on it. Well, I'm sorry to say, after I've done some research and learning about this topic, that those symbols do not mean automatically that the objects that I'm getting at the store are in fact recyclable. The numbers inside of the chasing arrows actually just indicate the type of plastic that things are made from. So for instance, a number 1 is generally found on the bottom of those big white milk cartons, the thicker milk jugs that you see, the gallon jugs that you see. So those might be number 1. And number 4 is usually for plastic bags, so like that thinner material. The numbers just indicate kind of the stability and the pliability and the flexibility of the different plastics. It does not, in fact, mean that everything is recyclable like we think it might be. And the plastics industry did that on purpose because they want you to think that it's okay to purchase these items and that they will recycle them for us. But unfortunately, only really plastics numbered 1 and 2 can be recycled, and sometimes number 5. But in general, most of plastics do not get recycled. In fact, the latest average is about 5 to 6% of the things that the plastic objects we put into the recycle, only 5 to 6% of them get recycled. So, out of 100 objects we put in, only 5 or 6 of them actually go through that cycle to get recycled. So I thought to myself, well, my goodness, I'm seeing all of this plastic around me now at the stores. Where is all of this plastic coming from? Plastics are made from chemicals and fossil fuels. And fossil fuels are coal, oil, and gas. And much of the plastic that we have today is made by ethane, which is a byproduct of gas. You'll see from this image that this shows a hydrofracking plant. And hydrofracking, I'm going to break that word down for you. So hydro, many of you may know, means water. And fracking is kind of a fancy way to say fracturing, which means to break something up. So in order to get the natural gas from the ground, what happens is the company will pump water, the hydro, pump the water down into the earth, and then it fractures the shale and the bedrock underneath, and it allows the gas to sort of filter up. Unfortunately, there's 2 issues with this process, because as this process is occurring, it can contaminate the well water, the water that you see kind of running through, that goes to people's homes. And so the process of hydrofracking can contaminate people's well water and their drinking water. The other issue is that these types of facilities cause air pollution as well. As you see, there's the ethane gas that's coming up, and that's causing pollution into the air as well. So you can kind of see this picture, and now this is what it looks like in real life. This is what it's like to live next to factories like this, hydrofracking plants, or they're also known as ethane crackers. So kind of those are similar words for this type of a facility. And unfortunately, many of these facilities are built in places that have low income housing, and they are also an environmental injustice issue because they are affecting Black, Brown, and Indigenous people of color in a disparate way. They're affecting those types of populations more. And so I can't see your hands right now, but I'm guessing that no hand would be raised if I said, who would like to live next to this sort of a facility? No one wants to live next to this type of place. And unfortunately, because of the pollution that comes out of these facilities, there are higher cases of people that get cancer and other illnesses if they're living right in these, what we call fence line communities. There's a big fence that goes around these facilities, and the land around them is very cheap. So again, people that have low income can afford to live there, but unfortunately they do end up with more illness in general. So it's just really bad. Like right from the get-go, plastic just in the production causes pollution. The next question that I had was, well, if the plastic's not being recycled, where does all of it go?
All right.
Plastic ends up in the oceans. And it's not in the ocean from big cargo tankers, from ships that maybe have a collision or something like that, or they're not dumping it into the ocean. No, it actually comes from our towns and cities, and the plastic gets swept up in the rainstorms, and it goes into our water systems and slowly makes its way, as we know through our water studies of water systems, it goes into rivers, and eventually it ends up in the ocean. And so a lot of plastic is floating around in the oceans right now. And the issue is that once plastic ends up in the ocean, you have the sun kind of beating down on it, and the waves are kind of, crashing it all around. And so the plastic starts to break up into tiny little pieces. Unfortunately, because plastic is man-made, it doesn't biodegrade, and it doesn't kind of compost into something that's useful, that goes back into the environment. No, unfortunately, plastic breaks down into tiny, tiny little pieces of plastic. And we call those pieces microplastics. They are fragments of plastic that is less than 5 millimeters in length. And we even have something called nanoplastics, which are super, super tiny plastic particles. So that goes into the ocean and floats around. And we have now found microplastics everywhere in our environment. They've been found in new falling snow in the Arctic. They've been found as deep as the Mariana Trench in the oceans. They are found in the air that we breathe. A lot of times, I'm from the Northeast in the United States, and so we like to wear those fleecy, fuzzy sweatshirts to keep us warm. Every time we do a load of laundry, those little particles, those plastic particles that the fleece sweatshirts are made of, can kind of go into the environment from the wash or from our dryers, and those particles float around to become part of the air around us. So microplastics are becoming a huge issue because they are everywhere, and they affect our food chain. Animals and even plants can sometimes, if the microplastics are in the soil, plants can absorb them as they're growing, and they kind of come into they can come into the food chain that way. So we are ingesting them and eating them. So as a mom of 2 kids, I was like, oh my goodness, what can we do? How can we stop this problem? The best way for us to stop plastic pollution is to stop making plastic. And I love this next slide. I loved the way that you kind of think about this, because we have to turn the plastic off at the tap. When you have a bathtub full of water, you don't just start taking out the water with the bucket to get the water out of the tub if the tub's overflowing. No, you have to go and you have to turn off the tap. You have to stop where the production is happening, where the water's coming in, or where the plastic is starting to come into the system. Because at this point, we can't recycle our way out of this plastic problem. There's just too much, and it's not possible to recycle all of the plastic that we've produced. And so you might be sitting there thinking to yourself, but, oh, I'm just a student. Is there anything that I can do to help solve this issue? And thankfully, the answer is yes. One of the things that we can do is to say no to plastic bags in stores, and bring reusable bags. So when you're shopping, don't take a plastic bag, and even paper bags, while they're better than plastic bags, they still have an environmental impact. The best option is to bring reusable bags to the store instead so that you can fill them up. And if you reuse them, some of the bags that I've been using, I've had for over, I would say 8 or 9 years, and they're still great. You can wash them, you can bring them back to the store. So that's a good place to start. Another really, really great option is to choose reusable water bottles, and to not purchase the plastic water bottles. Plastic water bottles are really hard on the environment. Again, when they're produced and to recycle them, it's challenging, and they create a lot of pollution. Also, there have been some questions that have come in recently on studies of the plastic, the way that plastic is made. Some of that leaches into the water as it's sitting in a plastic bottle. So there have been some questions and some studies done about how safe the water is to drink out of these plastic bottles, especially if they're kind of stuck in a car and it gets really warm. The warmer the plastic is, the more chemicals seem to leach into the water. So if you can, choose reusable water bottles that are made out of other materials like aluminum or glass, although glass I know is a little hard at schools. Another option is to say no to plastic straws. They can also really have a detrimental effect on the environment. They get stuck in a lot of places, and a lot of sea life can, as if they're interacting with them. There's a video online that was shown a while ago about a sea turtle that got a plastic straw stuck in its nose, and it was super painful for the turtle. So, for the 10 minutes that you're drinking out of that plastic straw, it stays in the environment for a lifetime. It doesn't break down easily. So another great option is to say no to plastic straws. Finally, you can choose reusable containers for your lunches, like aluminum ones, or even sturdier plastic ones to put your snacks, your fruit, your carrots, your chips, and things like that. Another option too is to actually sponsor a plastic-free lunch at your schools. Right now, in one of the schools in my town, we're going to have a plastic-free lunch in April, and so we are working with our the staff at the school in the cafeteria to serve all of the items without plastic. So they're changing the salad clamshells, the plastic clamshells that the salads usually come in, to paper ones instead. And we're not using utensils, plastic utensils. Instead, we're asking the students to bring in their silverware from home that day. And again, to bring in reusable bottles instead. So there are a lot of different actions that we can take in order to reduce our single-use plastics, those kind of plastics that we interact with for a few minutes at a time, and then that end up becoming trash, and they don't break up. They last in the environment forever. So I hope that some of these things could inspire you at your schools. And I want to ask anybody: are you in? Are you excited? Will you join us and try your best to reduce single-use plastics?
Kathy, thank you so much for all this, and for the image of the turtle, especially of their cute animals. If you're going to end with a cute animal picture, there should be a reptile or amphibian, and I'm glad we got one in there. So thank you.
Absolutely.
We're going to dive in with questions shortly, but as I said at the beginning, we're going to start with our Kahoot. So if you want to come out of screen share, see us again, have a bit of a conversation, I'll give you a second to do that while I pull up our Kahoot. We already got 40 people all in on that. If you're new to Kahoot, the faster you answer, the more points you get. Test some understanding, have a little bit of fun. I know there's already 43, and I'll give you guys a few more seconds to come on in. And again, Mr. Shadid's class is here, and they are like our all-time grand champions. So our other live groups, YouTubers, the gamut is on you to do well today. Best of luck. Kathy, if you want to help us with the answers with a few seconds to spare in each of these, you're welcome to chime in and give a little hint. But I'm going to get us underway momentarily. Let's do this thing, folks. If you sign in after you've begun, that is totally fine too. Let's get started, and then I'll head to all our classes for all of your questions. Here we go. Okay, 3, 2, 1 to question 1. How many plastic particles are currently estimated to be floating in the ocean? Hint, it's a lot. It's a very high amount. Is it 1 million, 100 million, and then we're getting into unfathomable numbers, 171 billion or 171 trillion? A billion is 1,000 million, and a trillion is 1,000 billion. So it's getting pretty chaotic pretty fast. Most of you have your answers in. See if you're getting the sense of this with. So a bit of we had more people pick billion. It is trillion. Like it's an astonishing, ridiculous amount of plastic. A garbage truck a day, a minute goes into the ocean.
I think it's a minute. Yeah.
It's too much. And so as this breaks down, we end up with all these little particles, areas the size of Texas and beyond in the oceans that are all plastic particles. So it's a lot. It's a distressing thing. And Hero McCaw was on the quickest on the uptake with that one. Question 2, we did cover this explicitly, true or false, and I'm hoping you were all paying attention early on in the presentation. This is something that I really like that we feature in our plastic presentations generally. I'm glad you highlighted it so well. The recycle symbol, does it mean that a container can be recycled? True or false? I think it did when I was very young. And then, as you said, it sort of was a good strategy to convince people otherwise.
Exactly. We call that term greenwashing, just because it's stuck on the bottom of the package does not mean it. So we have to, kind of question what we see.
That's right. Well, over 80% of our folks got that right. So do keep your mind on that when you see things in the future. It's not necessarily recyclable. You can always learn what things are recyclable. Local municipal things will have. If you look it up online, if you have a booklet, Toronto, where I grew up, had fantastic stories of how you could find out what was recyclable and not, and you can use that info to make some informed decisions. Smart Impala takes our lead. We're going to head to question 3. This is, I think, the easiest one, but we're gonna find out which of these is not a fossil fuel, not being the operative word. Coal, water, oil, or natural gas. I will note, by the way, while we're waiting for this to finish up, if you look at how fossil fuels are formed and like the process of that happening and like when the main fossil deposits were laid down and stuff, it's some very cool science. It's like a positive addendum to this. Water, of course, is correct. Almost all of you got that right. Very good. Natural gas is a fossil fuel. So it is in some ways better than oil and coal, certainly, which tend to be dirtier burning, but we want to make sure we're in a future where we are using all renewable sources of energy, including water, wind, solar, geothermal, the whole gamut. Polite Gazelle has our lead. It's a tight race going into our final question, and then I'm going to come to our classes. Miss Hurley's class, you guys are going to be first for a question when we go live in a minute. But question 4, even as a young person, there are changes you can make in your life to help decrease plastic pollution, like these kids holding up a plastic bag, Earth. Why not? What do we think? 65 answers so far. I hope you're all on board with this. Kids are you guys like know all the facts, and you're the most keen people in the world, this generation. So I hope you all know that the answer, of course, is true. Anything that you can do as a kid, as an adult, at any age, there's tons of things that you can do to make a positive difference. Now, here's our podium. If you are on the podium, let us know. We'd love to hear from you. Expert crowd number 3, Smart Impala number 2, barely, and the winner by 15 points is Polite Gazelle. We've got a gazelle and an impala together. We're a good grouping of the antelope family. Kathy, we're going to dive into Q&A. You can see us? Yes, we're good?
I can see you. Yes, absolutely. Yep.
Way better that way, I find. We're going to head to Ms. Hurley's class first, grade 6, 7. If you want to kick us off with a question, you are good to go. Hi, guys.
Hi, is there anything students could do about the plastic that's already in the ocean?
Great question.
That is a great question. Goodness. I haven't had that one before. I guess just kind of, students can always write letters to government officials and talk to their parents just to make sure that people are aware that you think that issue is a really important one. And you can kind of, I guess, just try to vocalize and talk to trusted adults so that you can try to make an impact. But
it is a tricky one, by the way. Like that, I'm really glad we got this question. Cleaning up plastic that's already in the ocean is one of the most challenging logistical things in the world. A lot of our students will be familiar with the Ocean Cleanup Project. Boy and Slat's a name familiar to a lot of students, and that's fantastic. And really, there's some great innovations being done in that space. The oceans are huge. Plastic is tiny. It's very difficult to clean plastic up from the ocean without getting things that you don't want to, like some of the wildlife that's out there. So this is it's one of those problems that we are going to chip away at over the decades to come, and we will undoubtedly innovate in a very serious way as we continue to try and find ways of doing it better. But it is incredibly challenging. It is way more economical and easier to stop plastic at the tap level. And even to clean it up in rivers en route. I'd encourage our classes to look up something called Mr. Trash Wheel, which is one of the most innovative ideas of stopping plastic getting to the ocean at all in the world, and it's being implemented all over the planet. Because once it's in the ocean, it is a really, really challenging thing. But as Kathy, as you said, kids by writing, kids by marching, kids by speaking up, you guys have made a huge, tremendous impact in the last decade. Kids under 16 have changed the world in the last 10 years because of that level of advocacy and because you're so united. So keep that up. And by the way, for our student too, thank you for skipping off after you asked the question. We don't get many skippers, and I appreciate it every time. Mr. Hancock, I'm going to head to Georgetown. Come on in, guys, and take us away.
Hey, Kathy, almost everybody who's asking a question is wondering, why was plastic created in the first place, and why is it still being created today? Why is the tap still running?
Oh, that's also a great question. So plastic is amazing. Right there, the plastic was created because it's so durable and it's so useful. Again, when you look around you, my computer is made out of plastic. It's used in the medical field for a ton of different things. So there's a lot of plastic that's not what we call single-use plastic, but it's durable. Plastic was actually made because it was intended to be used for a long period of time because of its durability. And so that's, both a blessing and a curse with it because it doesn't go away. So the reason that it's still being made is because plastic is equal to money for the gas and oil industry. A lot of times now that we're switching over to solar power and wind power and kind of away from our coal and gas, we have our electric vehicles and we're trying to heat our homes with different kinds of energy that is renewable. The gas and oil companies are trying to figure out a way to make money. How can they use these fossil fuels to make more money? And their answer to that is plastics. So that's why plastics are so cheap, because they're using the natural gas and the fossil fuels to make plastic and to sell plastic. So because it's such a large income, it's that's why they still have it.
Yep. Great question, guys. I always like when we get deep probing ones like that. Miss Huey's class, we are going to head to you guys, joining us in lovely Hamilton. If you want to unmute your mic, turn on your camera, play around with the devices. There you are. Hi, guys. Welcome in. Hi. I know. We're on YouTube together. I'm very excited as well. Do you have any questions for Kathy today, guys?
Yes. Sophie, stay on, please. Yes, we do have a question. Nirme, go ahead. Very loud, okay?
What country has the most plastic?
What country has the most plastic?
Yeah, perfect. Most plastic pollution, Kathy. Is there a country that produces the most of it?
I believe that it is China, but I'm not 100% sure. However, I do know that if plastic itself was a country, it would come in as number 5 as for impacts on climate. So there's just a ton, but I believe that it is China. But the United States is also a very high producer of plastic. So
And well, it's funny because we get this question a lot when we have things. So China, of course, has well over 1 billion people. India has over 1 billion people. So cumulatively, yes, more plastic. United States, Canada, Australia, all the countries that are like sort of the Western G8 block of countries, we per capita, per person, produce the most plastic. Like all of us are culpable in the plastic thing. And of course, one thing that I always like highlighting these programs, because it really behooves us as a collective to work towards this. Individually, plastics are convenient. They're in everyone's home. Almost certainly every one of you has plastics on you, literally on your person or in a lunch bag or in your classroom all around you right now. Like, they can be very useful things. They were made for a reason. The thing that we need to recognize is that we produce a lot of waste of them. So that's something that people have always been sort of tricky with, is you can have something that can be good and bad at the same time. And the more that we know, the more we can take positive action to, change how we're doing things and use sustainable products. And we're seeing that really en masse in a lot of places right now, which is really exciting. And again, in large part because of the advocacy of students like you. So great question, guys. Miss Cottrell's class, we're going to Baldwinsville. If you guys want to unmute your mic in New York, come on in and take us away. Hi, guys. Who's going to do it today?
Do you think that we should use the laundry detergent containers to fill up at grocery stations?
Interesting. I like that idea. Could you refill laundry detergent containers at a store or a grocery store or something like that? That's a really interesting idea.
Yes, absolutely. And that's kind of the wave of the future. I hope that we have reusable containers that we can bring back to the stores and fill up and do. It's called bulk shopping. So sometimes you can get rice and popcorn kernels and things like that at the store, where you bring your own container that's like a reusable bag that you put the ingredients into, put the food into, and bring home. But the same thing can happen with laundry detergent or shampoo. The things that we kind of run out of that are already housed in plastic, you can bring the container back to the store and refill it. Yes, absolutely. Hopefully that will happen more and more.
So we got that question, and my first instinct was to look up refillable laundry detergent Scandinavia. And of course, it's happening there. The one thing that I always like highlighting to kids, if you're looking for innovative social solutions for problems, you can pretty much universally look at Norway, Finland, Sweden, Denmark, and someone there has done it. And so we're starting to see this in action. It's a really exciting time. And again, no one really thought to do these things before in a big, serious way, in a grand economy scheme. And so, yes, these are very innovative ideas. They are logistical challenges, but there's things that, again, save a lot of these problems down the line that Kathy highlighted in her presentation. So great thought, Ms. Cottrell's class. Maybe you guys could start that in your own schools.
I was going to say, and I'd love to add too, is another thing that people are starting to do is for takeout containers from restaurants. They're starting to make those reusable as well. So you can not have the black plastic containers, but have aluminum ones and things like that you bring back to the store and they wash and use again. So we're seeing more and more of that.
Fantastic. We're going to head to the Ecole fourth graders, also in New York, and then Mr. Shadow's class, we're going to come to you right after. So we're doing 2 more questions, and then time flies and you're having fun. We are actually going to be done after that. But I will encourage all our classes to check out beyondplastics.org, check out our whole litany of amazing plastic programs. And of course, if you have any more questions, you can reach out to me anytime. I will answer anything, put you in touch with Kathy, all that good stuff. But let's head to New York. Unmute your mic, guys. Welcome in, 4th graders. Hi. Hi. What's your question?
Why don't they make every plastic out of the ones you can recycle?
Great question. Kathy, did you catch that?
Yes, I think I did. So why don't they make every kind of plastic out of material that you can recycle? That is a great question. The problem with is that, the different plastics we have around us, as I was talking about, they have different pliability or flexibility, and they have to put different chemicals in to the plastic in order to give it that flexibility. So for instance, a plastic bag or plastic film, it's really thin and you can stretch it and do kind of interesting things with it that way, versus a plastic jug that's really solid and thick. It's because of all the other additives that get put into the plastic in order to make the materials that it makes it very, very hard to recycle. So it's because of all the different uses that we have for them that that people produce all different kinds of plastics.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, again, we use the term plastic as a collective, but there's so many. I mean, think about a pool ball, which can be made of plastic versus a plastic bag. Like, these are very, very different items, and so it's linked under this collective. It's made in a somewhat similar, process, but they're very different items, and our capacity to bring them back is different depending on what sort of infrastructure you have for that. Different cities. I moved 6 months ago, and there's different things that are recyclable here than there were where I grew up, because there's simply more opportunities to recycle things back in Toronto as opposed to a smaller town. So I'm really glad we got that question. Kathy, this has been so much fun. We are going to head to Mr. Shattuck's class, who I do want to hear if they won the Kahoot in a second as well, to Carter, who's asked more questions than any student in the history of Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants this year, and Colin. Hi, guys.
Yeah, I got second. I didn't win. I got second. I was like 15 points off.
Man, why are you even showing your face? I'm just kidding. Good job. Nicely done, man.
Second isn't good enough.
Second's great. Silver medal. Way to go.
Gold. Thank you. How many animals got stuck in? No, how many water animals got stuck in the plastic pollution?
Triple pressure, Kathy.
I don't know an exact number, but as far as, I'm not sure exactly what you mean by stuck, but I can tell you all of them. All of the animals in the ocean are affected by plastic. We talked about that the microplastic, that there's over 171 trillion. That number is so mind-boggling. People can't even understand it. It affects every single thing in the ocean. So I would say all of them, because they're either ingesting it through the water or getting tangled into it if it's bigger pieces of plastic. But we can see it floating in the oceans all the time, and even kind of coming up on the shore. So I think if I answered that question.
No, that's fantastic. And one thing that I think all our students can do, certainly, again, the more you can reduce your plastic impact and putting into the world, the better. One thing that I always do whenever I see or utilize the 6-pack containers for drinks of any kind, Coke, you can cut those up, and then you prevent an animal from getting stuck in them, like a fish or a bird. And so that's just a really small thing. If you happen to have something that uses those, cut those up before you throw them in the trash. Mr. Hancock's mentioning straight up refuse. Whenever you get the chance to refuse plastic, if you go to a store or a restaurant, you say no to a straw, you say no to plastic cutlery, that really does go a long way. So I'm really glad that your students are doing that. It's something that all our students can do. And I also want to note, just in case this wasn't clear, sorry, sarcasm is goofy sometimes. Second or any place in Kahoot is fantastic. If you were 97th and you got every question wrong, kudos to you for participating. It's really, really important. So we always like kids to be curious, and we love to take part. I'm just kidding with you guys because you guys are so great all the time. Kathy, thank you so much for joining us today. Is there a last message on the Beyond Plastics angle you want to share with us today before we wrap up and bring in all our students to say a big thank you and farewell? Anything to leave us with?
Absolutely. So just do your best to, like the last class said, refuse single-use plastics. Think about what you're purchasing. Try to use them less, and speak up and try to reduce the amount of plastic you use on a day-to-day basis.
Outstanding. Kathy, this has been so much fun. You are welcome back anytime. Thank you so much for joining us today, sharing all these great stories for our students, for your great questions. If you're keen to learn more, I'll follow up with an email in a minute, but please do reach out. If there's anything specific you want to know, I will get you those answers like that, as always. And Kathy, what we do to end every broadcast, I'm going to bring in Miss Hurley, Mr. Hancock, Miss Huey, Miss Cottrell, Nicole, Mr. Shattuck's class to join me in saying a big thank you and farewell. Everybody is almost in the broadcast. Oh, there's two more buttons. Three more buttons. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful day. And